Hello and welcome to episode 194 of The Crate and Crowbar. It is the 21st of June, 2017. And if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, that sounds echoier and worse than this podcast normally sounds, that's out of necessity. Because rather than record this in my office, which is hotter than the surface of the sun, we've decided to record this in Tom Francis's living room, which isn't. My name's Chris Thurston, and on this episode, I should have said this already, I am joined by Tom Francis.
Hello.
Because it's his house. Tom Senior.
Hello.
Because it's not his house. And Philippa War.
Hi.
Because she just got in the car with me when I left.
Oh.
You're expecting to do this alone, but we all just happened to...
That's how you get on the Crate and Crowbar for future reference. If you ever come on.
No, don't come to my house.
It's really warm, and that will cover all sorts of other mistakes as this goes on. That's not the news, though. But one of those mistakes could be that we didn't find out if there was any news.
Indeed.
Other than it's really warm, what is going on?
Well, there was a bunch of controversies about mod stuff. So GTA 5, or Take-Two rather, issued a cease and desist against the
Open 4
mod for GTA 5. Which is a kind of, like, I think it's described as like a backbone mod that a load of other mods use. And by shutting that down, they effectively killed modding on the GTA 5 modding scene. At least that's what people are saying. And in response, players have been giving it negative reviews on Steam. And that is now, its recent reviews are now overwhelmingly negative. And interestingly, I heard that there was a similar kind of reaction to the Skyrim, or I guess Bethesda paid mods thing that they announced at E3, where people were negatively reviewing Skyrim. And I saw somebody claiming that Steam had been deleting those negative reviews. And I looked on Skyrim's page and didn't have many negative reviews recently. So I actually don't know if that's true or not, but I'm saying it anyway. But yeah, this is, I mean, that's an increasingly common form of protest, kind of has been for a few years now. It's just review bombing a game. And I was trying to figure out how I feel about it, because on the paid mods thing, I'm actually kind of in favour of it, or at least I think it can be a good thing, and it'd be worth trying with a game. Maybe Skyrim isn't the best fit, because it's got such an established modding community. Maybe it's better to do it with a new launch. But I think it could lead to good things, and I think modders, if we can get to a system where modders get paid for their work, that would be better. But the GTA modding shutting downing thing, I think I'm kind of on the side of the angry internet mob, because it depends on the technicalities of it. But I was just trying to think, like, I don't know what the legal situation is at all, but just kind of is it right or wrong to distribute a thing that you can use with, is it at all reasonable for the maker of a game to ban people from making things that modify that game? And to me, it seems like if you're taking bits of the game, like assets and code and stuff, and changing them and then redistributing those changed versions, that is just like copyright breach. Like, that's taking someone else's work, modifying it, and then doing whatever you like with it. And I think it's basically reasonable that it's possible for people to restrict that. Personally, I think they shouldn't. But in fact, in terms of like what the law should be, I think it's probably reasonable to say you can't take copyrighted material, modify it, and then distribute it just however you like and be totally immune to any consequences of that. But if they're distributing something that just works with the game and doesn't actually include any of the Rockstar made stuff in the actual thing they're distributing, I don't feel like they have a leg to stand on. I mean, I'm sure like the end user license agreement, you waive away any rights to do anything with it ever. But it doesn't seem reasonable to me to shut people down from just distributing a thing that, yes, interacts with this game, but doesn't actually include any of its own assets.
I think from reading bits and pieces about it, Take-Two was saying things like it was because some of the things that Open4 takes advantage of are some of the things that enable people to cheat in the online side of things. Although I think they were like vague enough about that it's up to where you stand in the basic thrust of the argument as to how believable you find that. And I think it has also tied into plans, possibly by that same group of people working on Open 4, to add Liberty City, I think, as a playable area or something. So I think it's a kind of... It's a thing that has some valid concerns in terms of business and copyright protection, or rights protection in general, but it's the way that Take-Two have handled it has done nothing but garner ill will, and it's that thing of... Because we talked about it in the other podcast I did today, the RPS one, and I was trying to remember the phrase for when you bring... I don't know, like a flamethrower to an ice cream fight or something. Like, what is that phrase? Like, you know, but where you bring a thing
knife
that
to a
is so...
gunfight?
No, it would be the other way around.
Going to a knife fight.
Or but that's not a phrase, is it?
No.
Anyway, so, but that idea of, I think that they have just sort of blanket banned the entire thing, probably because it's an annoyance or, you know, whatever else, with kind of some valid concerns, but also no regard to the community that is actually evangelical about their game and makes the single player stuff viable for far longer than it would be, because they don't provide on that front anymore. It's all multiplayer now. So yeah,
Bring a lawsuit to a mod fight.
So,
or overreacting. I
think Brendy said bringing a lion to a cat cafe, which I really loved as a phrase.
It's odd they're doing it now after, you know, these mods have been around for years. I wonder if they're setting a precedent for their future online games, like Red Dead and things like that, where now they just want to crack down on that and make sure that the next iteration of whatever comes next, or probably Red Dead Online if it comes to PC, they can just go in right away and shut down all of these mods that might jeopardise its security. I
mean, given how unexpectedly huge for them even GTA Online was, and how much money they made from selling things that could hypothetically be mods, like skins and cars and stuff, I can see that they maybe don't want that to even have an inkling of an ecosystem in the future. Just kill it now, because...
But, like, cheating is also a legit problem.
It is, certainly.
GTA Online. But I think... So another phrase that I can't quite remember is that thing of, if you only have... like a spork, everything looks like a spork, or something.
You have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Yeah.
If you have a spork, no problem looks like anything. It's like, what to do? Everything seems unsolvable.
I can sort of solve everything.
But, you know, they've got cease and desists at their disposal, so sure, fire off a few of them. And they've also shut down a bunch of cheat sites as well, I think, in the same, like, breath of
litigation,
heavy-handed corporate legalese. So, you know, there's some valid and some absolutely garnering no goodwill whatsoever, and trying to apparently crush the community that evangelizes for you. So, nice one.
If you have a bull, every fight looks like a china shop.
I like that. I don't know where I was going with sporks, because I was like, I was fairly sure it was hammers, but then I thought maybe it was screwdrivers, and then I was just like, well, it's definitely not sporks, but maybe I'll just see what happens when I start on that, like, route of...
No, sporks was the Alanis Morissette line.
Got 10,000 sporks. She just needs porridge to like, deal with now. Or something, I don't know. Is that the news? Have we newsed?
If all you've got is a trolley, every problem looks like 2 tracks. One of them has 3 people.
It looks like a train is going to hit a fat man.
Yeah, exactly. What were we talking about? Yeah, that seems like news. It's post E3.
We did it.
So, yeah.
There was also, it was kind of weird, but there was a really huge TF2 patch today, I think, or in the last few days. That wasn't like one of those big named updates. It was just a patch, but it was primarily balanced stuff, and it was a huge list of balanced stuff and really big rethinks. Several weapons they just completely started again from scratch and just totally changed how they work. And I was reading through that today. I haven't played it long enough to kind of really have an opinion on the changes or anything. Also, I haven't played them, which is probably the essential ingredient. But it's got a good. It was like the patch list, the change list is a good read. It's for each problem they start with, here's what we see as the problem with this weapon. We think that, for instance, the Sandman is a weapon that the scout, unlockable bat for the scout, where you can hit a baseball at people. And only if the ball has been travelling for like 2 seconds before it hits them, does it stun them. And if it stuns them, then they can only move slowly and they can't fire their weapon. And everyone's hated that forever, as far as I can remember. Because having control taken away from you is horrible.
Is it beaning when you hit someone with a baseball?
Yeah, probably.
Or...
I think that came up in Futurama once.
If all you have is a baseball bat, every problem looks like a bean.
So they're and in the change list, that starts with, people have always hated that this takes control away from you, takes away your ability to fight back. If it happens to you, there's no real solution. You just, have to take whatever's coming to you. And also, because it's only at long range, it tends to feel pretty arbitrary whether you get hit or not. There's no pure skill way to guarantee hitting someone at that range. Therefore, when they do, it's always a little bit luck on their part. And so they set that out as their objective, and then they go through the changes they made to it, and the changes that now it doesn't take away your ability to fire. You can still fire, but they've made it the effect triggers with less flight time, so you don't have to be so long range with it. So it's slightly easier for the scout, but the effect is less severe. And then I think the ball regenerates a bit quicker or something. And so for each one of the weapons they go through, they do it that way, and they explain what their goal is, how they've what their idea is to fix that, and then the specific changes it actually boils down to. It's really cool.
They do that on for the bigger or the more the changes that they want to highlight on Blizzard's Overwatch patches. They'll have like developer notes on particular segments to give a bit more flavour or explain what their thinking was. And it's been a while since I sat down and read League of Legends patch notes, but they used to do a similar thing where they would actually at least explain the thrust of what the changes were to champions or whatever else, just to guide people. I think maybe when you've got such a vocal community, you want to set expectations, or you want to seem like you were humans trying to do a thing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that Dota really doesn't feel the need
It's the exact
to do
opposite.
that.
If we have a single anonymous designer, you'll never find out who he is, and we will never explain anything he does.
And it will be 0.2 of a change to a thing, and figure it out.
You occasionally get the little jokes in Dota patch notes that show that someone's listening, but like that's like trying to pulse through a jumper.
I'd be really I'd be really interested to know if that's an intentional decision by Valve, if they've talked about this and they've decided for Dota it's right to not explain it, and for TF2 it's right to explain it, or whether they're just different people and they have different opinions on this and they just do their own thing.
I suspect, not to get into the Dota wang of it, but I suspect that, because there's a thing, quite a well-documented thing, where when you explain the intended, the intended effect of a patch, you can almost have that effect without then deploying the patch in terms of the game's metagame, because people will stop playing. This was proved at StarCraft, I think.
There was a League thing where they included a patch note for something that ended up not being shipped in the patch, just I think through oversight or something. But people noted the change in their play. I think it was a nerf to a character or something, and they were like, "Oh, it feels different." That kind of.
And so I think it depends on the type of the game. TF2 has, it's probably a little bit easier to lay out, this is what we'd like this weapon to do, this is the problem with it. Whereas like, MOBA changes or RTS changes tend to be extremely granular. It's like this unit turns around 0.3 seconds quicker now, which means that over time it probably does like 30% more damage or something, because it can track a target quicker or whatever the actual output of that is. But the moment you start laying this out to people, it probably can maybe imbalance things if people overvalue certain changes and things. So Dota always just leaves it as like, it's like scrying tea leaves. It's just, the patch is there, the numbers are there, and people just sort of pull from it what they want.
I wonder if they would, in an ideal world, rather not even have patch notes. Just say, changed it, take a look, let's
figure it out.
Because I can definitely imagine some very, data-oriented people at Valve kind of explaining your intent to the user as polluting the data, if you're saying, because I imagine the first thing they do when they launch a patch is watch very intently what happens and see, what does the win rate go up like for this character that we buffed, or, we hoped that this would make this character more useful. Are people picking them more? And initially, that's going to be, if you tell them, oh, we made this character stronger, then everyone's going to pick, more people are going to pick that character because they at least want to check out those changes. And I guess probably after you change the game, the data is just garbage for a while because it's just going to be people experimenting. But if they didn't announce it at all, I guess you still wouldn't get data right away because people just wouldn't know what the differences are. They'd take a while to just find out and learn to experience. But it would be interesting. You definitely get different data.
I think laying out the mathematical nature of the changes, literally what values have been changed and to what, is the closest to neutral you can get while still giving people something. Like, because the other side of it is it's not just data-driven people at Valve. The community is terrifically data-driven. They provide an API to that community so people can data mine the hell out of every match that's played. So the sort of living game of Dota is a kind of repository for information for both the community and the developers in terms of like what's popular and what's going on. And the moment someone with authority at Valve steps out and says, this is what we want the game to be, it kind of ruins that pool, because part of the game is figuring out, trying to solve it, right? Like, it's supposed to be this huge unsolved problem. And so the developer can't give any clues because that kind of spoil it a bit. Like, you know.
It's interesting to me because League tries to have the best of both worlds because they are a lot more, I don't want to say dogmatic because it's not quite that, but they have a very definite idea of how the game should be played and what they want to do to improve it in certain ways. So, you know, they'll they'll make a patch so that the early game is more interesting, and they'll explain to people that that was the intent, and I think there'll be a certain amount of fulfillment off the back of having explained it and people reading into that. And obviously if it really didn't work it wouldn't bear out eventually, but I think they are happier taking a lead in shaping the game in a way that doesn't fit Dota. But I'm actually really interested in the idea of patch notes and where it came from and how it evolved. Like, it feels like it's become part of consumer rights culture almost at this point, because it's like people want to know what's happening with the game. They want to know, and it also ties into early access because people want to know that people are still working on the game, and they want to know progress, and they want to see Trello boards, and they want, you know, all of this stuff to make sure that their investment is being cared for. And it's kind of interesting that I'm assuming these things were just deployed in a kind of, oh hey, here's, you know, a courtesy information dump of like stuff that we've changed if you're interested. But now it's like this thing that has to be done and that has to be pulled apart and posted and accurate. And
yeah, it's definitely, I mean, some games don't post update notes, and even Valve's games, they've done things where they'll just patch and there won't be an update about it. Because that's where conspiracy theories often start, is, wait, they changed something. What did they change? Did they add the secret 10th class, or did they do this? And I can't remember what game I had this with, but I do get annoyed if I see the game update and I look for an update news to find out what changed, and there's nothing there, because I feel like there's, you know, something of value has been given to me, but I'm not allowed to access it yet because I don't know what it is. And if it is just bug fixes, then usually I don't care. Although, you know, if you're actually having a bug and it's ruining the experience, it really matters whether that bug's in the list or not.
I think it never really occurs to me. I boot up Steam, I watched it update a bunch of things, but all I'm really bothered about is whether that's impacting me streaming something on Netflix or, you know, I'll check on things that I'm expecting to be interested in or that have caught my eye, or, you know, that are adding particular content that I'm curious about. But it's one of those things where I would be fine, I think, if people weren't explaining what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. One trend I really like is that, and I think this is related to the early access thing, quite a lot of games are bringing patch notes into the game itself, so there'll be an option on the main menu to just see what's changed. And Off-World Trading Company, which we talked about recently, when you log into that, it gives you a breakdown of everything that's changed since you last played. So it knows when you last played, and then compresses all those changes, which is cool, except that the dialogue, I guess they're kind of being cute about it, but the dialog box will have a list of those changes, and then the confirmation button for it, there's no like OK or cancel, there's just a button that says, wow! And the changes were like, moved the OK button in the replay menu 3 pixels to the left. So I looked on the list, there's like 15 of them, but they were all so minor, it was incredibly difficult to really mean that wow.
Oh.
That was an inauthentic wow.
Yeah. I also, I'll talk about this in a bit, but been playing Dead Cells, which is an early access game, and I've only been playing it just recently, like in the last 2 weeks, and they have a patch notes link on the main menu, and so I used it and looked at what the patch notes are, and the last, like all of the patch notes are things that I have, like it's always been that way as far as I'm concerned. I've never played it without those changes. So it ended up being like reverse patch notes, like going down the list, every single thing that they changed, I already know that's like that because I've been playing the game and it works like that. And so I've been reversing it, engineering in my head, like, oh, it didn't used to work like that, or there used to be no oil, or like electricity didn't used to transmit through water.
One last bit of news that makes me very excited is that the Necromancer is coming to Diablo 3 next week.
Oh, is it next week?
It is, yeah, next Tuesday. So might be able to talk about it on the pod if I get a few hours.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
That's an excuse you to Diablo, Tom.
Well,
traditionally you don't need
an
one.
excuse. So yeah, I'm going to put another 100 hours into Diablo as a Necromancer.
What's so great about the Necromancer?
Well,
Corpse explosion.
Yeah, that's it in 2 words for sure. I was talking to Blizzard about it actually this week, and they were saying how that I was asking them what they had to change about the Necromancer to make it work in Diablo 3 system. And they said that's actually move away from a lot of the poison spells because Diablo 3 is a much more immediate combat game and much faster. And that's why, so they had an initial version of Corpse Explosion where you clicked on one corpse and it exploded. And they're like, this feels a bit weak. So now it just all explodes.
All corpses explode.
Yeah.
Everywhere, or?
I think it's like a combo. You just you kill loads of things and then hit the detonate button and watch as they just all pop and obliterate everything else.
The Necromancer was my favourite class in Diablo 2, and it had this brilliant, feeling of like a tide to the combat, where initially, because none of his stuff did do a lot of initial damage, it was all a lot of poison-based stuff, a lot of low damage things, a lot of minions that would fight for you, and then Corpse Explosion, which is huge damage, but at least one thing has to be dead. And at the start of a fight, often nothing is dead. And so until that first body falls, it was always pretty tough, and you had to be really careful and keep yourself alive and let your minions take the damage and poison things. And I had a dagger that did a huge amount of poison damage over time and also made things run away. So it was like perfect Necromancer tool, because something comes near you, you stab it, it runs away. It was called the Screaming Dagger of Pestilence. You stab things, they scream, run away, and then eventually die. And then as soon as the first thing dies, whether it's from that poison or whether it's from one of your minions wearing something down, you immediately cast Corpse Explosion, and that kills a bunch of other stuff. And now there's more corpses, and then you blow up those corpses, and then so there's like just this wave of death that just erupts from that first body. That's just like, I win now. One thing died, I get to win.
I love that you could create a golem out of any item in the game, and the golem would have the same properties as the item that you used, which was an amazing, potentially just impossible to balance skill that I don't expect to see return. But it was amazing in Diablo 2.
Because there was something like that in Dungeon Siege, where you had a golem and you could feed it items. And it was kind of what you did with your trader trash. Instead of selling it, you could feed it to your pet. And yeah, it would gain some of its properties. So I think if you kept feeding it weapons, it would get more attack. And if you kept feeding it shields, it would get more defense.
I really like that idea.
It's raised on a diet of shields.
Let's go back to Dead Cells, Tom, because that's what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I had played it last week or whenever I last talked about it. And me and Graham have gone through a sort of bizarre switcheroo where he was on at me to play Dead Cells, and I just coincidentally happened to discover Cave Blazers around that time. And I fell in love with Cave Blazers, he fell in love with Dead Cells, and we were both yelling at each other to play the other one. And then eventually we did both play the other one, and both of us thought, no, that's not that good. Well, I think...
I thought he was playing quite a lot of Cave Blazers.
He is now.
Okay, yeah.
And now I'm playing loads of Dead Cells. Like at some point, nothing really, just like very slowly, we were talking about it the other day, and Graham was saying like, I still think Dead Cells is a better game, but every day I play a bit more Cave Blazers and a bit less Dead Cells. And at the same time I was playing more and more Dead Cells.
I think the daily challenges really help with like getting people involved.
Yeah, I was playing the daily challenge in Cave Blazers, and it is, I really like the game still. And it's, the thing it does brilliantly is that every time you play, you get a different set of blessings and pickups and passive perks, and they stack and stack and stack until you have this really pronounced, interesting build that you haven't had before. And Dead Cells, so they're both side-on platformers. They're both roguelikes in the sense that there's permadeath, the levels are randomly generated. And both of them have some kind of persistent progression as well. In Cave Blazers, you level up and you unlock perks, and a perk is just a kind of, it's almost like a class. You pick that at the start of the run, and then it will do something. The one I use in Cave Blazers is I fire 2 arrows instead of 1, but my melee is slower or something. And in Dead Cells, you find as loot drops blueprints, and a blueprint doesn't immediately unlock that item. You've got to take it to the end of the level, so you have to survive to the end of the level, and if you die before then, you lose it permanently. And then when you get there, you still got to... the blueprint is saved at that point, but you still don't have access to the item, and it will still never spawn until you spend cells to unlock it. And cells are what you get from killing enemies, and again, you have to take them to the end of the level, otherwise they're lost. But that progress towards unlocking things and the things you've unlocked is persistent, and that determines what drops. So every time, like early on, the things that can drop in the game are very limited. You keep getting the same things over and over because you haven't unlocked anything else. And a lot of things about Dead Cells really put me off it at first. Like, I think it's bad at the new player experience, at least for me, because I kept finding the same things over and over again. I didn't really like those things, and so it was just kind of boring. And also the level design seemed really bad at first because there's just loads of dead ends. And it has a system of teleporters, but those teleporters weren't in the dead ends. So I'd go down a dead end and I just had to walk all the way back. And sometimes there'd be like spikes and stuff, and I've got to jump over shit now and do the same thing in reverse. And then pretty early on, you get access to 2 different abilities that interact with things that you find in those dead ends. So there's like a weird green pustule thing, and now I have the ability to turn that into a vine, which takes me to the next part of the level. And as soon as you have that, like, now the level design makes sense because there are no dead ends and everything leads somewhere and it's fine. But that early experience is just bad. It's just worse. And so I kind of got past that with just brute force. It was annoyingly surprising in that actually. But once I had that ability, it really started liking the game more. Until that point, it feels like the game is just being mean to you. It's just like, no, you don't get to play this game. You don't get to, everything's just going to be bad for you because you haven't got to the right place. It doesn't tell you how to get to the right place. So what you need to do to unlock this is just until you have that, everything just sucks a little bit. And then eventually I just, just over time unlocked enough stuff that I started to find more interesting things. And I could access all parts of the level, and it has quite an interesting structure where instead of being a linear series of levels, the first level leads on to the promenade, the something promenade, I can't remember what it's called. That's the only exit to the level initially, until you get the thing that can make the vines out of the green things, and then even though the level is different every time and it's randomly generated, there is always another exit from it going to the sewers, and you can only get to it if you have the ability to grow those vines. So essentially, once you've got to that point, like, you have to beat a certain boss to get that ability. Once you have that ability, from then on, you always have a choice of where to go from the first level. You can either go to the promenade or you can go to the sewers. And then you get a third ability that lets you also go to the Ossuary, which I don't know what an Ossuary is in real life.
It's like a crypt, isn't it?
Bone store.
Bone store.
Bone store. When all you have is a bone store, every problem looks like an ossuary. And so now I have, every time I start the game, I have 3 different choices as to where to go. And within each of those levels, there's also, I think, at least 2 different places you can go, depending on what other abilities you have. And so each time I play, I get to decide where I'm going to go. And like Cave Blazers, you do find random things, and those random things inform your build. But it's just 4 things. You have 2 weapons and 2 abilities. And an amulet, but the amulets have mostly been not that dramatic in terms of what they do. I found one that makes you go invisible after 5 seconds of not attacking, which is incredible and like suits my place, my preferred play style in all games really, really well. And then I also found a blueprint, which was my first blueprint I'd found in ages, and then immediately died to a group of enemies that I had been perfectly defeating until that point. And I still can't really tell you why. Just everything went wrong all at once, and I couldn't deal with it, and I lost my blueprint, and I lost that awesome ghost amulet. So there are less like builds, there are less combinations. It feels less intricate in the way all your different perks and things are stacking up, because you're not getting a load of perks. You're just picking, okay, I've got the double knives, and there's one thing, I can't remember what it's called now, but like a firebrand or something, where you throw something like a grenade, and when it lands, it just sets fire to everything nearby, and it's a really good like indirect damage weapon if you before you attack enemies, you can just sort of lay down fire in their area and set fire to them. And that would be a good damage combo, both those things. One of them does good indirect damage, and daggers is one of the highest direct damage thing. But that build doesn't give you a lot of like stun or ways to disable enemies. So for your skill slots, you'd probably want something like a flashbang, which would disable enemies for a little while, or an ice grenade, which would slow them down, and stuff like that. So you're finding things. What you find determines what your options are, and then from those options you pick a build by just combining these things. And so that part of it is less complex than Cave Blazers, but the combat itself is way, way better than Cave Blazers and just feels really, really satisfying. It's quite skill-based in a way that I didn't like at first because I was bad at it. But now I'm good at it and I do like it. And it really does, to a bigger extent than I realised, than I would have predicted. It really does have that feeling of mastery because you start this at level 1 every time, and level 1 doesn't get any harder, and you unlock new weapons and stuff, so you get better. So level 1 just gets easier. It's just like early on, it was a real challenge to ever get to the end of it, and now it's I can trivially get to all 3 exits that I have access to, and it's just a question of which one I want to go to and how long do I hang around. I'll always kill every enemy on the level because it's just worth it to get all their cells and find all the loot and stuff. And I'm almost like speedrunning it. Like I just have absolutely no fear on level 1. I know what every enemy does. I know exactly how to deal with all of them, and it's more like finesse. And I'll just be like doing forge rolls under them and then figuring out the most stylish ways to kill them. And that becomes really satisfying. I really enjoy that now. And just I'll still fuck it up sometimes. I'll still take some damage, but when it works, it looks really spectacular. And hitting things feels really good, and finding good combinations of weapons that just completely destroy stuff is really satisfying. And then when it does get hard, it gets really you have to keep learning enemies in a way that, I mean, the game gets compared to Dark Souls a lot. I don't think it is that much like Dark Souls in structure. It feels more like just a roguelike because it's randomly generated levels for one thing. But it does have that thing of learning an enemy and just learning what it's going to do and how it can hurt you and what its timings are and that kind of stuff. And once you've got that down, it's got a dodge roll like Dark Souls, and it's pretty key to not taking damage. And once you completely understand an enemy and you've practiced it a whole lot of times, your muscle memory is developed, then it becomes pretty trivial to deal with them as long as you also have the right weapon in some cases. And so, like, the enemies I struggle with are just the ones I've encountered the least. There is one that's, there's this huge skeleton knight. It's like 3 times your height, and they're slow, and they don't have any ranged attacks, but if they start attacking and you don't immediately stop them, they just do a devastating series of sword swipes, and it will kill you. They're quite tough as well, so it takes a lot of damage to deal with them. And if you want to, taking them on in close combat is really difficult. You don't do enough damage to like stun them out of attacking you, and once they start, it's really hard to make them stop. And lately, I played with a build that had ice grenade, which freezes people obviously, and an infantry bow, which is a bow that does critical hits at close range. And the infantry bow did 175% extra damage to frozen targets, and so it's a little bit elaborate to like hit someone with a grenade and then also get to point blank range and then also fire your bow. But if they're frozen, then it's fairly easy to close that distance. And if I froze one of those knights and then walked straight up to them and shot him point blank with a bow, it literally just killed him in one hit. And it was so satisfying. It's just like, it's a critical hit. This bow does great critical damage. They're frozen, and it does bonus damage to frozen targets. And that was just like a really satisfying build. And then I've had other builds where like, still with the infantry bow, and with a sentry, which is a thing that you throw out and then it'll attack enemies, but you have to stay close to it to keep it firing. That was dealing with most things for me, because you can just hang back and place a sentry where you need it. It will shoot some things, and if it doesn't kill them, you just throw out another one. They're free. It's just a cooldown. Until I got to like some robotic spider things that fire out infinite flying enemies, and they're like a sort of I don't know quite how they do it, but if you get close to them, they like drop a bunch of grenades and then just start spewing basically bats. And those bats will chase you. They can just pass through walls. Nothing can stop them. They're reasonably tough individually. They're not complete cannon fodder. And they'll just be like 12 of them in a batch, and after you defeat those, it just spews out another 12, and it doesn't seem to have any kind of limit. And I had this amazing build that was destroying everything. It really felt like I'd kind of won the lottery of drops. I'd got everything that worked really well together. I got this really overpowered turret, and I had that infantry bow, and I had the ice grenades and stuff. And then suddenly hit this enemy that was just, with any other build would seem impossible, and with my build was still incredibly brutally difficult, because hanging back and throwing a turret doesn't work when it can just produce infinite flying enemies that can chase you down. And fighting those things, you can just about do it, but you're usually going to lose some health, or you're going to it's going to be a struggle, and it can just do that all day. So you can't really get into that situation where you're just killing the things that it produces. You have to get to the thing itself. And that's terrifying, because it can also drop grenades on you, and right around it are just endless bats. And my infantry bow that does critical hits at point blank range, whenever you do a critical hit, it goes into slow motion. So I'd be like running in, dropping down to this thing's level, throwing an ice grenade at it, dropping down a turret to try and hurt it, hitting it with my daggers, and then double jumping back out as the bats all spewed out after me, frantically like firing arrows at them and trying to freeze them, and then jumping off a ledge, because you just have to get as much distance as you can to kind of give yourself some space to deal with them. And then while I'm jumping off the ledge and sailing through the air, shooting with my bow, and every time it hits, because they're flying right in my face, it's point blank range, so it's a critical hit, so it goes into slow motion. So diving through the air, and every now, like firing like 10 arrows, each of which goes into slow motion and kills the thing. Just like fucking amazing. And then I died. Because it was really, really hard.
It sounds more like Diablo than Dark Souls.
Yeah, when the Necromancer thing was announced, I'd just been playing Dead Cells at that time, and I suddenly thought, like, I think I want Diablo to be like Dead Cells now. It just, like, the combat is just really kind of meaty, and every enemy feels substantial, even when you get to the point where you can easily defeat them. And I sometimes feel with Diablo, like, they're so cannon foddery and so kind of, they just kind of float away when you attack them, like the weaker enemies anyway.
They are until then they're not, I guess. When you get like the thing Diablo does, or Diablo 3 does with the stacked modifiers on high level enemies, where it's like, this guy is just going to, you're fucked basically, because he's terrible. There's one guy who's gold and leaves a trail of fire behind him and is creating infinitely spinning lasers and.
I love the guys who chain. They must get together beforehand and like chain each other up with fire chains, and it must be like quite an organisational process to like, get that all set up.
Remember who your buddy is. No, not you two.
Yeah, don't wander off. The fire chains will bring you back. I played Dead Cells a bit at PC Gamer Weekender and immediately loved it, because I just love the pixel art and how it looks as well, which is got over cave places, which is very I don't know how to describe it.
Rudimentary?
Rudimentary, yes, perfect.
It's very Spelunky 1.
Yeah, but worse.
Yeah, it's got a strange tone actually, because it kind of, it is pixel art, and it's very kind of, I would call it blurry pixel art. There's loads of shaders going on, there's loads of filters and things, and your head is very indistinct. It's kind of like a point of light almost, and in fact, when you start the game, it's not there. It kind of grows out of you in a weird way. I guess maybe it's a cell. I didn't really think about it. But it has a strange tone, because it's very dark and gothic, and the levels, the settings for the levels are, like there are literally two different kinds of sewer. And the rest is castles and crypts. So it's incredibly traditional. But then it also has like a weird strain of humour in it, like not necessarily in a good way. It's a little bit pop culture referencey. Like there's a pair of sandals that let you kick people and interrupt them, and the tagline on them is "This is Dead Cells," all in capital letters.
Right.
Like this is Sparta thing. And it's like it's not funny, but it is a joke.
Yeah, it is a. Oh God, I was about to say 10 years old, but I suspect that's wrong.
Who knows?
Someone does.
Probably about 20 years.
No.
15.
15 maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
You can also, this is completely unrelated to everything else, but you can select your diet in the options menu. And that determines, they're very rare, but there are health pickups. And I completely forgot I'd done this, but when I saw that option in the menu, when I was just setting up like sound volume and stuff, I looked at the options and it was like omnivore, vegetarian, vegan, fruitarian, monster. And so of course I chose monster. And I didn't think about it again, but when I I played a bunch and then went back to that menu, I remembered that I'd selected monster and then thought, oh, that's why I keep picking up, like, guts. That's why this whole game I've just been eating guts for health. It's because I told it I was a monster. And so I switched it to fruitarian now and I'm just finding cherries. It's good.
All in all, Dead Cells.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually, Tom mentioning that it was at the Weekender made me click that was the game everyone was going on about at the Weekender.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz around it. Yeah.
Right, that's why, yeah.
Really satisfying combat, like immediately satisfying. Like hitting a thing feels really nice in it.
Yeah.
Which is what you don't necessarily get from cave places.
And they explode into gems, which you do get from cave bases.
Hooray.
That, 2-column diagram we're drawing. Or you and Graham have been drawing. Coming in handy. Tom. S.
Hello.
What have you been up to?
Let's start with Tekken 7.
Okay.
To completely change genre and tone and everything.
It was also at the PC Gamer Weekender.
It was.
There you go. There's a segue. It's not important.
The PCs that they were supposed to be on broke, so we had to get in an arcade machine. And then people were all tweeting snarky about it, like, oh, it's supposed to be a PC gaming show. Anyway. It's out now.
In summary, Tekken.
Tekken 7 is, like, it should be the kind of accessible counterpoint to Street Fighter, which I tried to learn last year, but found it just such so irritating to pull off just the most basic kind of Hadouken
in Street Fighter.
Yeah. The towards down towards
the quarter circle stuff.
all that stuff. Like, I can't be fucked with that anymore. I've discovered. And I actually, I got like a stick thing from the office, and tried to do it and it was easier. But I kind of wanted just to be able to execute what was in my mind rather than having to go through this muscle memory learning process, which I just don't care about anymore and don't really have the time to do. And Tekken, like, it should offer that, and it does offer that if you put a lot of time into it. But holy crap, they hide it behind a story mode that is just utter drivel. Absolutely abysmal story mode, which is all cutscenes that really get into the lore of Tekken, like Heihachi and his son, and like the whole devil lineage that goes back generations, and then which is fucking stupid anyway. But it's not stupid in an entertaining way, because it just goes on and on and on, and in such a self-serious way that it's infuriating. And the fights themselves are like one round in a kind of a burning building or some set piece. And then you don't even have to do any moves, because it gives you shortcut button presses to do the attacks. So if you want to do like an uppercut or a fireball, well, you don't get that many fireballs in Tekken, but a kind of special move, you hold down the special move button and then press a face button, like Y or B, to do that move in story mode. And it ends up just being, it feels like you're just not playing the game at all. And it's also teaching you nothing about how the game actually works when you go into like a competitive environment. So it's got no tutorials. It's got a training mode where you can kind of go through an incredibly long move list, and if you want to, you can do them one by one to learn how each character works. There's no sense of kind of what each character does, or what their whole vibe is, or their style is, or how you're supposed to play them. There's no hooks at all for new players, which for a combat system like Tekken, which is way more accessible and readable for people like me than something like Street Fighter, feels like there's a huge missed opportunity there for them to have actually made it.
It feels like Injustice 2 just came out, and people seem to like that, and NetherRealm, not NetherRealm. So who are the people who also did the new Mortal Kombat game seem to have carved out that niche for themselves now, is like, we make the silly spectacular fighting games that you play if Street Fighter is intimidating. Which
are still competitive if you're at my level, and up to probably like an intermediate level. And just because a beat 'em up lacks that, top tier esports Street Fighter level thing, like, it can still be really fun, especially like if you're having an evening around with friends and stuff.
We got quite a lot of mileage out of Injustice in the old flat.
We did. It was brilliant. It was perfect for that. And Tekken is 100% should be that game. And the game they've made isn't really like
That's a shame.
Which is a shame. Though I'd say that, like, having played quite a lot of it, because I am quite a fan of the Tekken series, I've played them since like 2. It is still a good Tekken game, and it's still kind of a fun, interesting game about easy to execute maneuvers that let you just make decisions without having to think too much about the actual physical act of doing a move. And there's still lots of, instinctive, interesting stuff about, keeping your distance and learning the distances that different characters can affect and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been an interesting experience to go back to it. Weirdly nostalgic as well, because you see all the same characters come back, but in slightly different haircuts. So Paul is still in it. The guy with the enormously tall hair, so 2 foot tall. He's got a big punch.
Like Marge Simpson.
Yeah. Really butch Marge Simpson. Yeah, that's what Paul's like. There's a panda in it. You can be a panda.
Good.
You can punch a boxer.
Can he be a kangaroo?
I could. No, I don't think you can be in this one unless it's like a skin change.
Can he be like a little dinosaur man?
No, Gone is Gone.
Gone is Gone.
Yep. Thank
What?
God.
The dinosaur's called Gone.
Okay.
There's
like,
a
Annie.
tiny 2 foot tall orange dinosaur called Gon, who was the most irritating
The best character in Tekken.
Tekken. Also the best character probably in Tekken 3 or whatever it was. No sign of him, thank goodness.
Do you think they had trouble in China with beating up a panda?
Well, they never have historically, but like the panda's been there for generations of Tekken.
Because didn't World of Warcraft get into trouble?
Yeah, well, it delayed. Fun World of Warcraft fact that I discovered when I interviewed Jeff Kaplan recently, weirdly, was that the panda race, Pandaren, was supposed to be the alliance race in the first expansion, Burning Crusade. And they got quite a long way with making that, when they were told that they couldn't do it for cultural sensitivity issues. At which point they had to find something else, so they added the Draenei instead.
Right.
So, and then subsequently something changed, and 5-6 years later, however long it was, Mr. Pandaria added them. But yeah, who knew?
So China just sort of
I think there might have been some. I don't know. I think it's not. You can't depict pandas at all. It's something about the context in which they're depicted.
There had to be Draenei in the world first.
Maybe the pandas were really racist in that version of the game, Maybe they were just dicks.
Yeah, God knows. I mean, like, well,
just
they are depicted as like drunken brawlers, like the brewmasters of Warcraft. So maybe that was part. I'm completely speculating. I have no idea. But obviously, there's something is fine about Tekken that wasn't fine about Sam Didier's panda people.
Yeah, it's hard to tell why, because, Butch Marge Simpson beating the shit out of a panda isn't a great, great image, really.
Not good optics.
Well, maybe it would just be like, well, if the person playing the panda were better, then, it's like get good panda, rather than...
The panda deserves this, China.
Like
Come on.
But the panda has like the tools to free itself from this situation, whereas
It's very much like real pandas. They just can't be bothered.
They have all the tools necessary to not be in the situation they're in.
But they just decide not to.
Exactly.
Lazy pandas.
They'd rather do forward rolls and eat.
One good thing about Tekken 7 actually is the treasure mode. You can fight in a string of people for treasure that you put on your character, and it can range from like neon glasses to like wearing a kangaroo on mask on your head, or just complete outfit changes.
Can you be a panda with a kangaroo mask then?
I believe so. Yep, that seems legit. Thing you could do in that game, and that's really fun actually, because it just kind of this incredibly self-serious story mode, and when you actually go into treasure mode, it undermines all that. And when you go online, everyone has just like ridiculous versions of characters. Like I fought like a mostly naked boxer with an actual stag's head, and I didn't even recognise which character it was to start with, but it was deeply strange and very very entertaining. So something good going for it.
Nice.
What else have you been playing, Tom?
I've also been playing Nex Machina. Have I said that right? Who knows?
Who knows?
Nex Machina, which is a twin stick shooter, was released this week, and it's fucking brilliant. Really, really great game about playing a man in a helmet who can shoot infinite lasers, fending off infinite waves of robots that can also shoot lasers that mob you endlessly.
Tell me more.
Well,
Top down?
it's top down, so it's like a bullet hell type deal. But on like little arenas that are just probably slightly larger than the size of your monitor. And then when and there are humans wandering around who are these kind of burly, lost dudes in green outlines. And when you plow into them, you rescue them. And a woman goes, "Hostage saved." And she says, "Saved." It's really, I'm not figured out why
Really
yet.
saved that hostage. Saved him right in the face.
Hostage saved. And the faster you collect the hostages, you get a multiplier for that, which is exciting. Then you get a multiplier for killing things, which is even more exciting. And there are just lasers everywhere all the time. And it's really, it's brilliantly designed, because you can tell when a shmup like this is good because you feel as though you're just on the edge of spiraling out of control. You're just you're in the zone, and you're just dodging impossible odds, and there are just 100 things on the screen swarming towards you, and you're somehow finding a way out and around the corner, and then you find a super bomb, and you let that go, and everything explodes, and it's just this kind of cathartic but really intense, almost like trance-inducing movement of colours and lights that is really exciting, and that is beautifully paced, because once you've cleared one little kind of broom, your dude blasts off and just goes around a corner, and the kind of geometry of the world makes no sense. You're just kind of going like a cube, around this giant cube one moment, and then down underground for another, going from room to room, and it gives you these little fast bursts of like 5 minutes of intensity, then a little kind of 30 seconds of relax, and then back into it for 5 minutes. And it's just absolutely fantastic, and absolutely loving it. It's the best one of these I've played in years.
Rad. That was awesome.
Very, very good.
It was Nex Machina, right?
Nex Machina.
Nex, as in N-E-X, or Nex as in N-E-C-K-S?
N-E-X.
Deus
Nex Machina.
Yeah, exactly.
Deus Nex. The other thing to say about it is that all its explosions are voxel driven, and because modern CPUs can make fucking zillions of voxels, they have some of the most satisfying blocky explosions in a game I played in ages.
Nice.
Very, very good.
Who's it by?
I can't remember at all. It's someone who's good at this stuff as well.
Someone good at this.
Yeah, show notes people.
Awesome. That sounds great.
What have you been playing, Chris?
Pip and I have been playing the same thing, or a little bit of the same thing, so we're good to talk about that. It came out a couple of weeks ago, which is Dota 2's PvE mode, which
versus
environment.
It seems weird. Like, you're really punching the grass, or
grass puncher. It is called Siltbreaker. So literally,
closer to the truth than I knew.
Siltbreaker is a guy, a big fish guy who's bad. But lore, man, it's lore. But essentially, this is something that they sort of touted that was coming with this year's International Battle Pass, which is the sort of mixed kind of betting book esports compendium thing they released to raise money for the international. So it is a paid thing. The minimum you pay for it is like
and
$7.
Valve. It's not just to raise money for the international.
No, of course. So 30% of it goes to the international prize pool, or the other way around.
25% usually.
Okay. Yeah. So some proportion of it goes to the international prize pool. I thought it was 30, but maybe I'm getting that confused with Steam.
Not usually.
They advertised it as a sort of, this is Act 1 of a multi-part sort of co-op challenge mode. And Dota's had things like this before, like seasonal events like Wave Survival and stuff against minions and things. And this is the most substantial thing they've done. It's really nicely presented initially in that, it incorporates, they've been doing brilliant comics for Dota for a long time, because they do really great comics for TF2 as well. It's just something Valve do weirdly well. For the first time they brought them into the game client, so that before you click Q for the first time, you can read through a comic that explains why you're doing what you're doing, if you want, or you don't have to, or while you're queuing for the game. And then there's loads of new UI and animations, a huge map that this thing takes place on as you sort of roam with your party of 4 from through forest doing quests, MMO style quests. It's gained an MMO style quest UI. There's loads of work and loads of new animations and new monsters and enemies and things, which is obviously pretty impressive. However, and it's a huge however, I think they have, and I see if you agree, Pip, I think they've pitched the entire thing at completely the wrong difficulty level.
Too hard or too easy?
It's absolutely nails hard. It had the potential, I think, of being a way in for Dota.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, maybe I'll play this.
Nope.
Oh, no.
It's, so the best way I describe it is, it feels like they have been playing MMO raids, and specifically Destiny, weirdly. You heard that feeling like someone at Valve was like, I want to make a Destiny raid with lots of different boss mechanics and things that happen in it, and a bit with traps and a bit with this and a bit with that. But the only version they've made is the nightmare difficulty level mega hard one. And it would be a really easy thing to have not gotten wrong. I think, because So there's a bunch of things that are frustrating about the way it's designed. One is that it's mega hard. Like the first enemies that you encounter in the game, when you first sort of aggro them, they have like a kind of like a slam attack, and that will easily take almost like 4/5 of your health bar in one go. And they come in groups of 3. So if you charge into the first group of enemies and think you'll just tank whatever they do initially, you'll instantly die. It'll kill 4 of you, like straight away. Like, you need to have a plan for kiting enemies properly, like, immediately, or you'll just die. But also, every single player has a limited number of lives, which is how many times they can be revived. And the entire party can run out very, very easily, and you only get new lives at certain points. And if you run out, that's it, you're over. You have to go back to the very, very start. And a complete run takes easily the better part of an hour or so. So if you wipe totally on a boss, like, it took me a long time to see the third boss, but it's a grind every time to get back to it. And because it's so hard, like an MMO, you kind of have to cheese every encounter. Like, you know, you can't pick for the entire pool of Dota heroes. There's a limited set that they've designed for this. They haven't changed anything about those heroes, but, you know, there's a pool that are approved for use. And it feels like there are right choices out of that lot, because some of them can handle those situations better or can cheese certain things particularly well. And you do get gold and can buy items to your character like in the main game, but some of those items feel like horrifyingly mandatory because they enable cheeses that make things much easier, and you only get like a reward for playing like a cosmetic item or something if you win, which I never have. And so, like, I don't know if it's much your experience, but like when we first played it, I think we were all taken aback by, like, we were so dived into it, like, they've added the fun thing, let's jump in, and then it was just
smacked in the face.
Yeah, horrible.
I don't know, because I played it before, just once on my own, because I was writing the news story for work and needed to dip in, and it's not so much the difficulty that I object to, it's boring. It's actually dull to do, it's dull to grind your head against, it's dull to play. And I think that's the part that I find unforgivable. Like, it doesn't reward you coming back in and trying again, and there's no feeling of, oh, but it's a nice environment to explore, or it's a fun setup. What it does is it drags you round a sort of dull, rainy forest full of waves of enemies that aren't very interesting to fight, while your teammates, if they're not on voice comms with you, they will just ping the map. It's the worst thing for just encouraging people to map ping, because it's like, oh, we should go over here, and you'll just get ping, 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 until you do someone's bidding. And then no one wants to play sport. No one ever wants to play sport. They all want healing. And then you just sort of go to... Oh, it's just so thankless and miserable, I thought. But it sounds like you've got a lot further and you've been compelled to go back in.
I was curious, so I realised as soon as we played it the first time, and we wiped horribly on the first boss, I realised, oh, this isn't something you play for fun. This is something you go and read the guide.
I see. No fun, eh?
You go and read the guide that is someone has done on Reddit. You read the mega thread of people figuring out what works, doing the kind of, we'll break it down, we'll figure it out. Find the nice friendly person who's written the 500 word, this is how I got to the end. It's actually a lot like trying to crack a raid. Like, you know, it's that kind of like, this character and this, you know, pick this character, make sure every team member pulls loot on them so they can get this item fast. This will enable this cheese on this boss, which will give you this thing. And they kind of find the lock and key. And that's, I think, I don't mind that school of hardcore co-op design, but I don't mind it when it sits on top of a game that offers you other things to do that lead you up to that point. Like, that kind of difficulty is most often found in MMOs, where there's a vast other game, and the very hardcore kind of raiding pinnacle is there for people who really want to commit to it and really want to find it. And often those raids are available in, like, lower difficulty settings as well. But some people enjoy the challenge of, like, how do we break the one that the developers have thought we can't do, you know? So I get that. But this feels like it's only that. And because Dota's other mode is, like, the most unforgiving multiplayer game in the world, it's like, there is no kind of, like, knockabout. You know, it shows that there's potential, I think, for a knockabout co-op mode in Dota. but I don't know why, it wasn't like, you can play it and it has a moderate difficulty and there's no life restrictions, so you can play it with your friends and you will see the entire thing if you persist. But if you want the good rewards, like the rare cosmetics or something, then you have to beat it on hard mode. That would have been fine. I don't know why it's only hard mode. You know what I mean? Like, that seems like that's such a huge misstep to me. And admittedly, this is only like part 1 of X, 2, 3, don't know.
2, I think.
Is it 2? It felt like 2, just based on the timing of it, because I think it expires as well when the international goes away.
Yeah, because part 2 is next month, I think, or the end of this month.
Right. But yeah, it's just a strange missed opportunity, because actually, like, you know, the version of Dota that Pip still got on your laptop is to preserve a PvE event called Wraith Night, which was genuinely fun. Which was just wave survival, which is in this as one of the boss fights, but simple wave survival with sort of variable waves of monsters was fine, because it was immediate. You got into it straight away. Like, you know, the new environmental design and stuff in this is lovely, but it's also, as Pip says, very bleak. Like, the first environment is like it's all set at night, and the first environment is like a rainy forest, and you go up to like the mountains, and you go into like a spider cave, and a temple full of traps that shoot blue fire at you and stuff like that. None of it is like, you know, amazing to look at. And particularly because, like, this year, every international has a theme. Previously...
They've had a colour.
Well, last year was desert, because it was gold and desert themed.
But, like, they've had a colour for years, and then they've now started fleshing that out because the battle pass has got so enormous.
Yeah, so, yes, last year's colour was gold, and that came with, like, desert themed stuff, and this year's colour is, like, turquoise, and it's all ocean themed stuff, so the new terrain, so which is like, basically, terrain in Dota is like a skin for the map, because the map never changes, but you can get, like, a total skin. Pip, you did an article about the new one, because it's under the sea, which is an amazing thing to do to that map, which is just to put the entire thing under the sea, basically. There's done one which is like a hedge maze, like that kind of thing. It looks really nice.
In StarCraft 2 as well, I noticed when watching some pro games, some of them are just underwater. And it affects nothing except when things die, the ragdolls float up towards the camera.
That's awesome.
There's one 0G Destiny map where that happens, where anything that's still alive doesn't just ragdoll, but things that have died just stop to float off. As if gravity is a function of being alive.
That PvP map where it's full of really narrow corridors and they're just full of corpses in some fights is quite strange.
Yeah, it's great.
This is definitely a missed opportunity for me, because I played loads of kind of skirmish versus CPU matches of Dota, just trying to get into what it was. And I really enjoy the way it feels and plays and how responsive it is, and the abilities were exciting to use. And I remember just like webbing up half the map as Broodmother against the CPU. Really, really fun. And I'd love them to, or someone, modders perhaps, to make some more accessible games that, you know, really play into those characters.
They actually have like a way of feeding you things that people have made, you know, like different game modes and things, just using the assets, which is kind of interesting. So it might be worth like having a poke around that if you're interested.
Yeah.
But like, it's so annoying with this Siltbreaker thing. Really ground my gears. Is that a phrase? That's a phrase.
That's a phrase.
I thought you were going to say ground my goat, just because your mixed phrases.
But I think it's just that frustrating thing of it. It feels like, I mean, Dota has a reputation of being this difficult thing that, you know, doesn't want you to play it, and you have to sort of get in there despite its best efforts in a lot of ways. But with things like this, with things that are supposed to be this fun knockabout thing that you could feasibly play with strangers, it seems like, and you know, that are part of a reward system of buying into a thing that profits their company. It's like, oh, come on, could you not have found a way to make it accessible to everyone who plays your game or who has an interest in this?
Weirdly, I found it easier to play with strangers than with friends, but only because with strangers, like, the stranger thing in Dota is, like, typically, we are crazy about the orthodoxy, we are going to play this completely correctly, which is fine for this, because there is one way to play Siltbreaker, basically. With friends, you get like, I would like to play the character that I like. Nope. Like, we play these characters, we do it in this way, and this is how we have fun. Like, that's the kind of game it is. And
this is fun in really heavy quotes.
well, this is how we get hats.
I'm done with hats. I want my underwater terrain and I'm done.
Get out of my house!
Do you have any idea what that water terrain takes? Like, this is not a commitment. It's just, there have not been Dota clothes I've wanted in so long. Just don't care.
I am at hat capacity, I have to say. Like, I've got some of the characters now, like, I have any character that's received like a big rare item every year for the last 4 years just looks like a fucking Liberace supernova now in my wardrobe. Like,
do you have any hats so fancy that you would have a separate vehicle to drive them to where you're going, like
yes,
the Queen does?
Absolutely. I have a Dota 2 staff that actually I could sell for more than the cost of a cheap car. So, like, if I did that, you could buy a cheaper car to drive it places, hypothetically, like the Crown.
God.
Yeah, no, it is a missed opportunity. It's not even that. It's just it's literally a difficulty setting away from being fine. Like, I think on balance.
When you're talking about like wave defense in Dota, suddenly we realise like the closest thing I have really enjoyed to Dota is probably Dawn of War 2's Last Stand.
Yeah, exactly. Fits perfectly into
I feel like that with Dota Heroes would probably be
amazing.
up for.
It's one of my favourite games.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, that's what Wraith Knight basically was. Like,
right.
Like that's essentially what that was.
Is that like a thing that's over now? You can't.
Yeah, that was years ago.
So yeah, it was their Christmas event one year, and I missed the one. I think it was 2 years before that, because there was an amazing event called the Grieveling, and then there was a year where they just didn't do the Grieveling and everyone was sad.
Livid.
And then they did Wraith Knight, I think. But the Grieveling was amazing because the river froze over and you were all like scrambling around trying to like find your footing, and you had little whistles that you could blow to turn into these like weird gremlins, creatures, and like you got weird themed loot and like,
actually it
candy,
was
I think.
it wasn't a year gap. It was Grieveling, and the next year was Wraith Knight. But what they did was they announced the Grieveling, and then they had the Grieveling cancelled by a character in Dota, so that Wraith Knight happened instead, because that was how they got out of a potential copyright issue with Blizzard.
But I thought there was a year where they didn't do anything, which is why everyone kicked off.
That was Diatide.
Okay.
That's because they missed the Halloween event. It was the year of Wraith Knight is the year they missed Diatide.
And then they totally... didn't they actually do something in the end because the backlash was so extreme? Like, it was just like, we thought we could do nothing, but actually you've shown us...
I can't remember if that was them or whether that was like, I don't know, WildStar or something. Like, I know that there was... or maybe it's that there have been more than one attempt by a video game company to not do a frivolous event that their fans have then completely imploded over. Although Dota never seems to get into, like, Valentine's Day, and other games really do.
No, it doesn't. It does Chinese New Year a lot more. It was the first game I think I saw commit a lot to Chinese New Year.
Yeah,
instead of Valentine's Day. Overwatch does it now as well, but I think Dota was a little bit ahead of go, and Dota's always had a huge audience in China, so I don't think it's necessarily surprising that they would prioritise that.
It sounds actually like it's got a little bit of a similar relationship between like Dota and China as there is between StarCraft and Korea, where both the StarCraft games are wildly popular in Korea and more popular in Korea than anywhere else, and same for Dota in China. But from what I hear, Dota 1 is still massively popular in China.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas the rest of the world, I think it's probably been replaced.
Largely use it, I think.
Yeah.
And the same with StarCraft, I think. Like, it feels like StarCraft 2, just talking to it, any like PC gamers audience, for example, I feel like if any of them are playing StarCraft, it's probably StarCraft 2. Whereas in Korea, it's a fair bet any given StarCraft player might still be playing StarCraft 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame because, it was an opportunity for them to do something better than they've done, but it feels like it's not the kind of mistake you make by accident. It felt like this is what they decided.
Aren't all mistakes by accident?
Yeah, that was a stupid thing to say. You know what I mean, right? Like, it's not like
I don't think they
oversight.
think it's a mistake.
Yeah, I think they wanted to make a hardcore MMO raid for Dota, but weirdly, I think they almost picked the wrong time to do all this surrounding story stuff right. Because they got that right. Like, there's even a nice thing where when you pick your character, you get you get given a contract, like, that billows up in the screen. It's a big 3D thing with magic text on it.
Nice.
And you have to click the bottom. And it's only when you click the bottom of it to continue that you realise that what you're looking at in first person for the first time is a teleport scroll. And you've never seen one before. And the whole thing starts to like glow, and you start to hear the TP sound effect, which if you've played Dota for any length of time, is awesome. Drilled into your brain. Like, oh shit, that's what's happening. And then you warp into the map. And like, it's such a neat idea. And if it was attached to something that was, because like, and I think as soon as we're into it, we're like, oh, you know, I'm into this. Like, there's a great little gag, like immediately, where you're walking through this jungle and you see these two, like, merchants. It's the first shopkeeper that you encounter, and another one who's injured. And you can buy your first items there and stuff and talk to them. And the guy who's injured is in deny range. So if a character has lost more than half their health, a friendly character, you can attack them to kill them and deny them to your opponent, which has no use in this mode whatsoever. But because that guy's being hurt and is by the side of the road, his health bar is, I think, just under half. And so, like, someone just, I'll try this. Because it's just automatic. Like, he's flagged as an ally, but it's just like, bang. You just murder him by the side of the road, and the little deny flag pops up over his head. And it's just
That's
like,
really
little, like that. There is potential in doing something like this that plays with Dota's vocabulary, but I just feel like it just shouldn't be this thing where you go into the woods, the first bear that you hit fucks you up with one massive clap of its hands, its bear paws, and then every time you clear a camp of bears, infinite wolves come out of the jungle, and the big wolves...
They just come out of the jungle even if you haven't killed anything. They're just there all the bloody time.
And they fire they fire their claws out of their faces at you. Shit. And it does infinite damage. It's just, wow. And a lot of it, what they've built and what they want it to be is like about dodging skill shots and like anticipating skill shots. But a lot of it has become like kiting things in a straight line, and there's one particular character who's very good at dealing with things in a straight line. And that character is fucking amazing. And is normally a support in Dota in Siltbreaker is just the king of the earth. Like,
I don't know. I think I just really object to it because for me, Under the Sea is just such a fun sounding thing. And like, it's also a really common prom theme. So it's like, why would you not make a fun thing for people to like enjoy and hang out during in a social way? Like, what is your damage? Like, why have you made it about the worst parts of being under the sea, like the pressure,
drowning,
and the death?
The dogs that fire claurs out of their faces.
I know.
It's weird,
those
like,
weird
actually,
animals that will mess you up.
Because given that this year's theme is under the sea, they added under the sea terrain, and the entire plot is about someone escaping from an undersea prison. It's conspicuous that the entire thing is set above ground. Even in some cases in the mountains. Like,
it's upsetting.
Yeah, I can understand why people's cross about this.
Very upsetting. I want more octopuses.
Shall we do questions?
Yes. Although, we should note that it's extremely hot. We're all a bit tired, and this combination of factors, nothing to do with gin, has made us all a bit stupid. So we're going to do a kind of a flash cut of questions that we can think of answers for in the time before we all melt. Terence writes, worst genre name, he suggests roguelite-like Doom clone RPG.
I've got to suggest MOBA.
I was going to go MOBA, yeah.
Multiplayer online battle arena. It's like a list of the 4 least relevant words to that. Or least unique things about that.
It's terrible. It might as well be gameplay.
Isn't Quake a multiplayer online battle arena?
FIFA is a multiplayer online battle arena. Of sorts.
I really have a special hatred for MMO just because there's no noun in there. They're all adjectives. Massive multiplayer online. There's no...
A mamog.
Massive multiplayer online. What?
Edge insist upon mamog. In their style guide.
Isn't it usually mamorpg?
Mamorpg, yeah.
Yeah.
I put a K in there. I don't know where that K came from.
I used the word shmup earlier, which is also terrible. Which is like, it's a shortening of shoot 'em up, and
which is a
many
shortening
games
of
are
shoot them up.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that once they get
which is
beyond
the shortening of you must shoot them up.
beyond a certain level of ridiculous, maybe they'll just become funny again. Like, there is something endearing about how non-specific MOBA manages to be. And so, and I really like how roguelike is now doubling down with roguelike for things that are sort of roguelikes, but going to incite comment threads about how they're actually not, because blah, blah, blah.
And roguelites. The problem is that Rogue had a large number of games that were genuinely a lot like it. Like, there really were a lot of rogue-like games. There was probably no better word for them. And now there are a whole load of games that are loosely inspired by that, but radically different in like 70% of all their other features.
Action RPG, that's rubbish.
Action game, to be honest.
I think, actually, didn't Valve just go Dota as an action RPG?
Yeah.
Action RTS.
Oh, right.
I don't really
Which is
enjoy
that's about the close. Yeah.
things like when people are trying to talk about like open world, or because they're not that
Sandbox
open, and
gets
sandbox
wildly misapplied.
like all of those things. I can just think of about a million other ways that I would
Big map.
prefer to describe them based around how they feel or how different elements of them play out, but because of the conventions of writing about it, if you don't say it's a third person, I don't know, sandbox adventure, even though that feels like it conveys nothing, it seems to be enough meaning to people that you'd have to still put it in.
Assassin's Creed-like.
God.
I think that RTS is good, but I think possibly it's good because the RTS genre is so conservative. And,
Yeah.
So free of experimentation and cross-pollination with other types of genre. So it's very defined. In
Similarly, fighting.
Adventure game is really bad. We all accept it now, but actually is Uncharted not an adventure game?
Yeah, and weirdly, like, point-and-click adventure is too limited because there are plenty of games that are kind of like that, but you don't do the actual action of pointing and clicking.
They're really I would describe the two essential features of that as being like story-driven and puzzle-based.
It's weird because as somebody whose history, certainly work history, is still predominantly not in the games industry, and I've got big, gaps in when I was actively playing video games, even though I was still, generally enjoying them and going back to them. It's weird to now be in a position where I need to pluck these genres out of the air because they are so nebulous that it's a struggle. And you guys seem to do it quite easily because you have that literacy with the actual specifics or the lineages that these games come out of. But if you take away a couple of steps within that, or if there's like a 5-year lull, as I have with some things,
It's all gibberish.
you suddenly go, hang on, I don't know where that comes from, so I'm not 100% sure that I'm applying it right, because even though it looks really similar to this manifestation of it, it's clearly got something key that differentiates it that I'm not picking up on, and you sort of have to then just ask sometimes when you're like, what genre is this trying to end up in, or what's the shorthand right now?
And now we have survival, which is like, aren't you always trying to survive though? In most games.
That just
Tetris is a survival game.
Yeah.
It just means game with a food mechanic in it. That's what that means, really.
Sports. Any sports. Our next question comes from Zed, who writes, what are some prequels that equaled or bettered the original?
I've got to say Deus Ex Human Revolution. Not 100% equaled, but very, very close to as good as Deus Ex 1, which is about as high a watermark as you can have to live up to. I was actually reading a thread. It's like Reddit's games subreddit, which is the kind of the more discussion news oriented one, not the meme one. It's like their game of the week or something to discuss, and so I've just been reading a whole bunch of people's opinions of it, and that's always, I like reading those because it's so long after all the furore has died down that you get just a lot of like sort of normal people just saying what they genuinely thought of the game, and there's no one's campaigning at that point. No one's trying to like, oh, I'm so angry about the DRM, or like
Something to just have an opinion about stuff.
It's quite a calm discussion, and I was pleased to see that it was just almost uniformly like, this game's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
And it really was.
No, I struggle enough with timelines.
Yeah. Don't know other than that. Trying to think of something that's genuinely better than it's...
Yeah. It's not a PC, but Yakuza 0 is brilliant and improves on the fighting systems for other Yakuzas.
Horizon Zero Dawn sounds like it's a prequel. It's not, but...
In some ways, all Assassin's Creed games are prequels to the future bits.
Origins is, closest they get to a real prequel. We shall see if that compares.
The next question comes from Danny, who writes, a non-PC gaming question. As one of your branching outside projects, would you ever consider doing a live tabletop RPG game? Keep walloping, he demands. Yes. So, it's something Chris, have thought about a lot. I don't know why I specified that now, and I never do otherwise. There are a few things standing in the way of that happening. One is that, I have a pen and paper role-playing group at the moment. We're playing Fantasy Flight's Star Wars role-playing system in order to play Star Wars. And while we have discussed potentially recording some of those things, and it could be fun, there's a rights issue there that I don't know how to deal with, because you're obviously dealing with a big old IP. The other side to this is, I think there's an issue of comfort with recording live roleplay session. I think it changes more about the playing of the particular game than almost any other form of recording a game being played. Because people are, they obviously put something of themselves into the characters. And obviously that can be done spectacularly successfully if everybody wants to do it. I do really enjoy things like the Adventure Zone, what they managed to turn D&D into. But something I think about a lot is that I think often those are functionally comedy podcasts. They're functionally sort of improv comedy podcasts where the game, D&D in most cases, is actually a source of prompts for people to be funny, which is a perfectly good basis for anything. But it changes the framework. It's not really like a let's play. It's like a comedy show, really. Yeah. And so, not ruling it out. Don't know how, when, who wants to do that, what form that would take, etc.
I think, they require a lot of trust for people to let their guard down and actually sink into the role playing. I have actually recorded pen and paper sessions before, but it's been because I needed to write up the experience of playing them. So, it's been about getting permission for the people that I was playing with, but also on the understanding that it was entirely so I could remember what we did when, rather than that it would ever be published or public or anything like that. And I think pen and paper is a really interesting thing because more than any other form of gaming that I have played, it has the capacity to make people really uncomfortable or sort of explore bits of themselves or do uncomfortable things. And I think that is, I wouldn't want to take that away from people just by making them aware that, strangers will watch and judge and...
Yeah, but I think that's another factor that pushes it always towards comedy, because pen and paper role playing is either devised drama or it's improv comedy, basically, depending on which way your group ends up going, or it's a little bit of both when everyone falls over all the time. And one of those things can be intensely personal and intensely, as Pip says, vulnerable making, and the other one is a big shield.
We had a mixed experience on that front with Dog Eat Dog for Shut Up and Sit Down, which is sort of a colonialism pen and paper experiment where the person who is classed as the ruler, I think, needs to make the people who are the natives of a particular place obey commands, and it's I can't remember the exact rule set. I'll dig out the article so that we can put the link in, but it was such a profoundly uncomfortable experience that kind of started off kind of lighthearted and quite it's just pen and paper, it's fine, and then just really went to some intense places. So, and I'm really glad we didn't put that online. It's just the article as a result and reflecting on that experience.
Yeah, so a big maybe. I've got some things I'd like to try, but yeah, those are my caveats. Things like one-off special pods and Bloodborne things and the Miniatures Monthly stuff is more likely in the time being. Fool of a Took writes, do you ever suffer from game hopping? Lately I found myself playing a variety of games for only 30 to 60 minutes at a time. Can you cure me?
I had almost the opposite with Dead Cells and Cave Blazers, where I want to play them both, but they require a bit of a mental gear shift. I think not because they're so different, but because they're so similar that when you, like, I went back to Cave Blazers recently and I just couldn't pick things up because it's not the same button as it is in Dead Cells, and they're similar enough that my fingers just reach for the thing that I was pressing in the other game, and I just eventually had to just change that control and work that way. But yeah, and also muscle memory is a big thing, and you just kind of learn that Dead Cells is better if you stick to Dead Cells, and you just get better at Dead Cells.
I sometimes get stuck in holding patterns, particularly with casual games for my phone. So there are a few match 3 games that I just really like at the moment. And so I actually have about 3... I've got 3 of them and a colour matching game on my phone. And they have that gating mechanic where, you play a certain amount and then it refills over time. Your lives refill over time. And so I will play until I've run out of lives in one, then move on to the next and just cycle between them. And it can really while away some time.
If you put all of their icons next to each other, they disappear.
Nice. But yeah, so that's one way of... It doesn't deal with the problem, but it just stacks up shorter experiences. And I sometimes find that that's a nicer way of dealing with it, because perhaps either you haven't found the thing that you want to play, or you're just not in the right mindset to play for long stretches of time. And that's when I really love the stuff that I find on itch.io, or like the little tiny experimental games that people make and that you just pick up on, I don't know, the Screenshot Saturday hashtag on Twitter or something. You find out about these things. And so those are actually just really lovely things where you can kind of get a hit of gaming in about maybe 20 minutes or usually less, and then just move on to the next thing. And it doesn't feel like, oh, why can I not get into these things? Why can I not, settle down for a 40-hour RPG? What's wrong with me? It's actually a quite freeing, I've played 4 entire games and it's not even 9 o'clock. This is brilliant.
I get this a lot. Oh, I've had it a lot recently, actually. Like the last game I probably got into on PC was Tides of Numenera. When was that released? February, yeah. And then before that, I really enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn. That was the other one that really got me absorbed. But I've been a bit of a dead zone since then. But I found that the trick is to just not play games for a bit. And then all of those like interactions that you're so used to in games, just walking around and hitting stuff, has become so blasé, like that gains novelty again. And at that moment, I think that gives you the little impetus when you return to a game or actually get into a game to actually stick with it more, because it all feels new again and it feels more exciting than it would do otherwise. And the trouble with hopping around loads of games is that you see more clearly what games do over and over again, the cliches they fall into and the patterns. So taking a step back for a week or two might be a good way of solving the problem.
Yeah, further to that, and I imagine, Tom, you'll experience the same thing. I don't have this problem since I gained a different hobby. Because I spend a lot of time painting now, painting miniatures, and that has eaten into a lot of time I would otherwise be spending faffing. And there's a lot of different forms faffing takes, like refreshing Twitter, or just falling down a YouTube hole, or reading a wiki for no reason, or, refreshing Twitter more, or dipping in and out of games restlessly and unable to settle on things. And I found having something that I find, not necessarily more engaging all the time, but like I get more satisfaction out of in the long run. And I know I get more satisfaction out of it, so I'm more likely to, if I feel like I'm about to stop procrastinating, I'll just sit up and do half an hour something else. That's meant that when I do decide to put time into a game, it tends to be more substantial and more like, or even if it's not for a long time, it'll be like, I am going to sit down and I'm going to play one game of PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds for as long as that takes. And I sort of have more control over how I'm investing that time, rather than doing that thing of dipping in and out, sort of bored, but not knowing how to not be bored.
I think it's also, though, from listening to you chatting about things as you potter around, like it is also that you sometimes hit on a theme of games or a particular game that does seem to float your boat. So it's kind of a combination of things.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I've always had like the game I'm super into, but what has happened is I've stopped bouncing behind the games I'm not really into. Like, rather than play something for a little bit that I don't really want to play, which is what I used to do. Okay. I now spend that time doing painting, basically, and that's overall more satisfactory to me because I get a little plastic man out of it at the end, which no game can do, apart from those games that allow you to print off your character or something. They can do it. Moving on. Simon writes, Dear Crisps and Crapstone, I've been an avid gamer since the early days of the ZX Spectrum. It's high time someone remade Quasitron for the PC. However, the first time I ever played Doom, I discovered that I had a real issue with 3D games and motion sickness. First-person games are the worst, and most are unplayable for me. Third-person is better, but some of those cause me real problems too. I know I'm not alone, because the first thing I do on buying a new 3D game is to search for anti-sickness mods. Often I can find something which makes third-person games playable, though rarely sufficient to cope with a first-person game. Usually those mods open up field of view and remove camera head bob, explosions, screen shakes, and so on. Witcher 3 became playable, Dark Souls 3 did not. In the old days, I could try a demo before buying to check whether a game would make me ill or not, but that's rarely possible now. Are developers and publishers aware that they are missing out on a bunch of potential sales by doing nothing to address these issues? Is it simply not something which is ever considered? Are they not interested? While I accept it may not be commercially viable to research the issue and try to make games which help, it surely wouldn't be difficult to include some basic settings for FOV and camera shake for those of us who are afflicted. Simon.
Yeah, luckily a bunch of different people for different reasons are pretty vocal about FOV sliders now, and if you don't have one of those, you'll get yelled at by the PC gaming community. And so hopefully that'll help. I think screen shake is less of a mandatory thing. Like when people don't do it, they don't get yelled at so much. And yeah, it's interesting to know about that. Obviously the big area of sort of research and rapid learning right now amongst developers is VR, where motion sickness is, if you do it badly, it's a huge problem for almost everyone. And so they're obviously doing a lot of research into what does make people sick, and in that discovering that everyone has really different tolerances for this stuff. And so I wouldn't be surprised if out of that just comes not necessarily like from an individual company making a VR game, then going back to their non-VR game and fixing that one, but just from this sort of common wisdom. The industry does kind of learn as a whole over time, slower than individual companies do, but eventually there becomes an established way of doing things that we've learned this doesn't make people sick. And so, I'm pretty sure that screen shake is a thing you would just never do in VR because I'm pretty sure that would make everyone throw up. And so that may end up informing 2D game development. I would say, in terms of testing things out, you don't really have to be afraid of using Steam's refund system. You can just buy a thing, and if you can't play it for sickness reasons, I think that's a completely legit reason to refund something. And it's all automated these days. Technically you submit a request and it gets approved, but I'm pretty sure that happens without any real human intervention if you have played less than 2 hours and
you'll know within
weeks.
2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the quickest things to check.
That's a very good suggestion.
I think something that I was going to add was I guess it would depend on how much of the stuff that is making you sick is hard baked into the technology that is operating things, because in some I'm assuming it is making available the slider, but in others it might just be they would have to recode the game or start from different first principles of animating the character or how it responds to particular things in the environment. But because it sounds like if some of the things can be modded within a short space of time of the game coming out, maybe those are things that aren't obviously baked in, but others maybe a bit more complicated. Something that I've found interesting along the research lines is I think there was a paper or a study about how people feel less sick if there's a nose on screen. You can kind of see the bit where in reality you would see a nose. So in VR, you can make out this tiny shape that you obviously aren't focusing on, but it gives you some sense of where your face is in relation to this environment that you're in. And I kind of wonder whether the equivalent of that is that the reticle, the dot on screen that annoys the hell out of me when I'm trying to take screenshots, but that people do incorporate just for motion sickness reasons. And I'm wondering whether it's not necessarily, obviously everyone will be different, but I wonder whether mods maybe could make that more pronounced and have an interesting effect, or like
replace it with a little like nose emoji.
Well, indeed.
Increase your character's nose size.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting to think about what they could add rather than what they could take away, and maybe have the same overall impact on the experience.
Yeah, just to play a third-person game.
Or maybe you could just have an overlay with a nose,
Yeah.
There's a nose watching you.
Nose
watching
out.
Nathan Drake.
It's fine.
I just feel sick if I can't see a nose at any given time. Being alone is awful.
It's like to play The Witcher, like Geralt's head just has to be facing backwards so you can see his nose at all times.
Yeah, he just looks back at you.
This is weird because I was reading a New Scientist article today about how this sounds stupid, but we can all see our noses all the time.
Yeah.
But we selectively, selective attention means that we just see a naturalized field of vision. So maybe it is just kind of putting that subconscious thing back in the game somehow. Actually, kind of
Your brain is secretly going, God, my nose is gone! Apart from my real nose, which I can still see.
Yeah.
I'll do
maybe
that
that's the problem,
study.
because
But in
it's
VR, you can't see your
interesting.
nose anymore because it's dark in there.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, well, they have a
We
special,
solved it, guys.
they have a special nose guard to conceal your nose.
Oh shit.
But in VR, you can presumably simulate exactly how the nose looks in real life, which is you see it through two eyes, and your two eyes are giving you wildly different accounts of where it is. Like, for 99% of everything we see is far enough away from us that our eyes do not significantly disagree about where it is. But if you put something that close, it's really weird. And in VR, you can do that because you're showing a different image to each eye. On a 2D screen, there's probably no way to show a nose that wouldn't look wildly weird.
I demand a nose slider.
It's weird because I spent this entire conversation trying to look at my own nose with both eyes open.
Nice.
Yeah.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, weird.
It's simultaneously nowhere and in two places at once.
Yeah. Amazing. That's the magic of noses.
I don't think we've
Hope that
helped.
answers your question. But no, they definitely should put settings in games to pay attention. The same with colourblindness or anything like this. Often just overlooked. Our next question comes from Jamie, who writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, this question is mainly for Tom Francis. A while ago, you tweeted a recommendation for a time management / distraction avoiding app that you'd found quite useful for staying productive. I can't remember what the name of the app was or when the tweet was, although I did spend a lot of time scrolling back through Twitter to find it. What was the name of the app, if you remember, and do you still use it? To everyone else, are there any apps or non-apps in your life that help keep you organised, or are you able to function professionally without these tools? Then he goes on in the second email to add this addendum. Oh gosh, in my previous email it seemed like I implied that Tom couldn't function professionally.
I was boiling with rage.
Without these tools. I did not mean that. I was referring to myself and my inability to focus on one task at a time without being easily distracted. I'm sure Tom is a consummate professional and a stand-up guy. Sorry, Tom.
My best guess is that he is referring to an app I made, because I asked for... I was just looking for like an app that I just wanted a button I can click, and it just tells me how long since I clicked the button. Which is not complicated, but I have really specific requirements, which is I want that time to be displayed in my taskbar. I need it to be like the title of the window, so that I don't have to switch to an app to find out how long I've been doing something. I can just ambiently see, and I want it to just be like... My idea was when I stop working to check Twitter, I have to click that button, and then while I'm checking Twitter, I can do it as long as I like, but I'll just be ambiently aware, this is how long, it's been 36 minutes, are you sure you shouldn't be getting back to work? Because I've tried like really strict rules, and they usually don't work, because sometimes there's a good reason I need to tweet something, like, it's from the Heat Signature account, and I want to share a dumb bit of code or a GIF or something. And if the system stops me from doing that, I end up breaking out of the system and not respecting it and not using it. So I wanted something more flexible than that. And I couldn't find anything that did exactly this, so I just made one in Game Maker. So technically it's a game, and it's called Tom's Timer. I think if you Google Tom's Timer Pentadac Twitter, it will probably come up. And it should still be up there, that you can download it. But it's literally just a button you click, and it just tells you how long since you click the button.
Is that a pun on Tom's Diner?
No. It was because it was a timer, and it was made by me, Tom. Didn't think about it beyond that. I do like the song Tom's Diner, though.
Yeah, but once you'd said no, it wasn't, I'd figured out the rest.
I thought you might be thinking, why would he call it that? Must be a Suzanne Vega reference.
I mean, I've made myself sound stupid now. Damn it. I use Tide every now and again.
Just a tide. Natural coming.
Just wait till it sweeps you away.
It will eventually take away my laptop and I won't need to do any work. No, it's a thing on Android, on Google Play, which it's based around that Pomodoro technique where you get like 25 minutes of doing a thing, and if you get distracted, you're supposed to just write that thought or that reminder or that thing down and then get back to the task in hand, and then you get like a little break, and then you have another 25 minutes, and then you get a longer break after, I think, like 4 of those. And this is essentially just a way of measuring those bursts, but it also has the capacity to play white noise of varying types while you're doing that, and I find that quite helpful for when.
Is that while you're working or on the breaks?
So it plays like white noise for that 25 minutes,
right,
and then makes a noise, and so I find that useful when I am trying to concentrate on something like maybe writing emails or whatever else, where I can just jot down extraneous thoughts or whatever, but other things it tends to fall by the wayside. So when I'm doing transcription, obviously I've got my headphones on, I can't hear it properly, and I'm usually in the zone with that anyway, but that is one that has helped. And also I have a Trello which I have set up for on the left, it's got a column of all of the things that I need to do at the moment, and it's a horrifying, terrifying list. And then in the middle, it's like the ones that I am actively working on right now, and it's only as many as I can actually do. It can't be others. And then on the other side, it's done list, and I love that list so much. And that's been a useful one. I think it's called Kanban, after like some kind of
like when they banned cans?
I think it was from a car company in Japan or something, and that was what
named after the Japan Kanban.
Thank you. But I think it was just a way of like making sure that a production line thing got followed. But I found an article about it, and it's actually been quite useful because I really love that done column. Love it so
That's interesting, because I have a to-do list I've used various things for to-do lists over the years, and I've never found one I really stuck with, so I just use plain text. And I actually use Sublime Text as a giant to-do list and sort of planning thing. And I used to, I'd have a to-do list and then I'd just delete things that I did, and that worked. But then it annoyed me that I didn't have a list of all the things I did. I wanted to know, like, I want to see all the things I've ever done. And so I started moving them, I would have the to-do list and I would just manually sort of drag them into this done column. And in Sublime, you can like collapse that category so it doesn't take up space. But it was there was like that interaction is so much less satisfying than selecting something and just hitting delete. Like that's the part I find satisfying about completing something, is I get to just delete it. Moving it was like this fussy kind of administrative task that wasn't satisfying. And now, because we started using version control for Heat Signature, I don't really need to keep log of what I did, because that's the commit log. When you actually, save your changes to the repository, you have to describe what the changes are. So I have this incredibly comprehensive list that's sort of, super accurate to the time I did these things, and also involves the things that John's done on the game. And so I don't need to keep a list anymore in my to-do list, so I can just go back to satisfyingly deleting them, and I find that really rewarding.
What was the to-do list on Android that we were both using for a while?
I use Wunderlist still.
Yeah, so I don't use that anymore, but that had an ability to tap it when you were done, and it would just tick it, and you you'd
Yeah,
be able
I
to
still
find
use it.
those later if you wanted.
I use web app slash phone app slash other kinds of app called Wunderlists, which allows you to create like auto repopulating to-do lists and things, which I use quite extensively for planning daily stuff, and then I add in writing deadlines when they come up, and that kind of keeps track of almost everything. I also use Sublime Text as a kind of bigger log of stuff that comes and goes with notes attached to things. Not everything's appropriate, and I also maintain several spreadsheets. And if you'd like me to go on at length, then look forward to the 3-hour Crate and Crowbar Google Sheets special deep dive.
Time management lock-in.
Just me, Chris, and my immense time management skills for the better part of 3-4 hours.
Well, who knows how long ago?
Exactly.
Time management.
I haven't blocked it out.
We'd like to thank our Patreon backers for enabling this wonderful spin-off podcast.
Indeed. So our next question, unless Tom, you had any time management
I have
tips?
no time management anecdotes that I would choose to put on a podcast.
That's saving everybody valuable
Yeah,
time.
I think so.
Our next question comes from Crowbarite in Exile, Marsh Davies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, indeed, Tom. Oh no.
I was like, who
That
banished
guy.
him? It turns out he banished himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what he tells people. Darlings, he writes.
Is he drunk?
Yeah. What was the worst named game at E3 this year? A strong contender is surely A Plague Tale. Innocence. Cheers. Marsh.
It's a high bar to clear, that one.
That is amazing. We couldn't think of many off the top of our head, so I looked up a giant list of all things at E3, and my god, is it rich pickings.
Yeah.
I want to start with one. Coma Remembered. It's got to be an indie game, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's surely the last indie game.
Blade Strangers. There are some here that sort of like either great or terrible, and I'll read it out anyway. Battle Sloss 2025: The Great Pizza Wars.
That's
You could go
that's
either way with
trying
that.
quite hard to be quirky, so
Yeah.
it's probably fine.
Away! Journey to the Unexpected.
Also good.
Yeah, Plague Tale Innocence is on here. After Charge.
Video game.
A dual hand disaster. Track her.
What?
What?
Track
Duel,
her.
hang on, there's at least a lot of, hang on. Is that duel as in two people fighting, or
Yep.
duel as in two?
Two people fighting.
Dual hand disaster.
Yeah, it was like a disaster on both your hands, and then track her is all one word for some reason.
But hang on, no, it's a duel as in your hands are fighting each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Track her. And then it's not like tracker, it's track her with an H.
Yeah.
Okay, video games.
Dark and Light.
Hmm.
Which is about as generic as they get. Dunk Lords is pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Can't argue with that. Genesis Alpha 1. Jesus Christ.
If it was called Genesis Alpha 1 Beginnings, then that would have been perfect. Just fell a little bit short.
In the good category, Golf for Work Groups.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Very good name.
I think I quite liked Juggernauts
Yeah,
as a thing.
that's it. Kydro the Awakening.
Games.
Yep. And it continued in this vein.
Lightfall.
There are some...
Matterfall.
Matterfall?
Yeah, Matterfall is something, but it's PlayStation 4, so
Guess we'll never know.
banished from the pod.
Lots of those were not PC games. In fact, probably none of those were PC games.
I mean, to be honest though, we should have stopped at Coma Remembered. Because that's
incredible.
perfect.
That is peak video game right there.
At least the last couple of years, right? Like,
It's catching up to Amnesia as a trope.
Yeah.
Comas.
it's a form of that. It's like,
Yeah.
I both have
Coma
forgotten.
followed
I've
by
forgotten
Amnesia.
that I'm not awake. Is like, yeah.
That's not medicine.
Neither's or any of the things that happen in comas in video games. I'm pretty sure.
Whatevs.
Alright, well, next time you're in a coma, but being in a coma means solving a lot of puzzles, while running sideways.
I'd have a great time.
You would have a great time, but I just don't think it's very realistic.
That would be my best coma.
Living your best
in the top
coma.
10 anyway.
Yeah.
To be fair, this industry, if this industry is changing to do anything, it is to build a chart of comas. Like, there are enough of them. Good. Our final question is actually a grudge. You'll like this one, Pip, because it's about something that you hate.
What do I hate?
What do you hate? We can make you guess, even though I read this out earlier.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
But I didn't think you were, so this is a genuine game. It annoyed you today?
Cucumbers?
No.
Oh. Windows 10?
Yes.
Yep. Oh!
Those are the two.
What are two possible grudges?
What do the cucumbers do?
They both ruin tuna sandwiches.
They're awful.
What? Tuna ruins a tuna sandwich. Cucumbers, like, if you just had cucumber and no tuna, that's a better sandwich.
No, but I feel like if I buy a tuna sandwich,
That's
I'm
rank
expecting
madness.
tuna in there. If you've bought a tuna sandwich and you don't like tuna, that's your lookout.
On trade description grounds, you have a point.
If I've bought a tuna sandwich and some idiot has bunged in a load of cucumber, that feels really wrong. That
No, don't
feels
get me
like
wrong, I don't
couldn't
understand
have
why you don't
been
like cucumber,
expecting to... So what's this grudge about cucumbers?
Okay. This is from Benedict,
Hello.
who is in my phone.
I know, I'm trying to show willing.
When I bought Metro 2033 during a sale, I expected nothing more than a cheap cucumber clone that didn't even have the decency of being open cucumber. Playing it, however, I was surprised to find one of the greatest cucumbers I'd ever experienced.
I
finished
hate
it
you
in one
so
day,
much.
only to immediately restart the campaign for a second cucumber. I broke my no pre-orders rule when last cucumber was announced, and never regretted doing so. Imagine my elation when Metro Exodus was announced at Cucumber with a gorgeous trailer accompanying it, even hinting at some form of open cucumber format.
I've stopped being able to work out which words you're using instead of cucumber.
If only on a level-by-level basis. This elation was quickly replaced with dismay when I read that the game would only be available on PC for Windows 10, a cucumber I've been loath to let into my computer. While it's still early and I haven't seen any hard clarification the Metro will indeed be made available for Windows Cucumber users, it's pretty safe to assume that this will be the case. What are your thoughts on games being used as incentives for cucumbers to upgrade their systems to the latest operating Cucumber, barring those who won't cucumber? Yours sincerely, Benedict.
Wow, your commitment to that bit was the stomach. I'm done. I'm so done.
Good, Jim.
It's bollocks. This business, this whole trying to... I mean, it makes business sense, doesn't it? But it's entirely on the side of the business that the benefit lies. So, you know.
That's business.
Just Cause 2 was Windows Vista exclusive, which turned out to be a huge mistake for Just Cause 2, predictably. What I can't remember is, like, how did I get around that? Because I never got Vista. And I don't think I will... Did I wait till I got Windows 7? Oh, I think maybe there's a hack, actually.
They tend to come to Steam eventually, actually.
Yeah, I always think that Steam is too big a marketplace for them to really avoid.
Does Steam allow you to get around OS restrictions?
No, but often, like, the benefits to Microsoft of maintaining some stringent restriction are, you know, secondary to the benefits of having a game on Steam where it will be bought a lot by people.
Because with Just Cause 2, they claimed that it was, like, technically... had to be on Windows Vista, like older OSs couldn't support the advanced features it had. So
yeah,
it wasn't
always
like
say that.
Yeah, obviously it wasn't true. But well, it was using some DirectX features, like it was using DirectX 10 or something, and DirectX 10 literally you can't have it on less than Vista. And so that, although it might be bullshit that they made it that way, probably it is literally true in that, you know, every version of DirectX does have a bunch of features and things that the previous one didn't, and so if Microsoft don't let you install that on a previous OS, it is technically true that the game doesn't run on that. But they did hack it. There was definitely a fix to make it run on Windows XP, so maybe I just used that. Can't remember. But I still use Windows 7 on my desktop machine. I use Windows 10 on this laptop, and And it's okay, but only because I've like permanently disabled updates, which means I'm incredibly vulnerable security-wise. Because you can't let them update it, because you can't trust them not to just lose your work when they do.
Yeah, you can't trust it not to... Because you can't just tell it, look, I'm probably working. If my computer is on, I'm working, so you have to wait. It won't accept that as a setting. And so, there's no point in owning the PC that... That's alright.
The problem is that, like, for now, you can get around it. There are workarounds, but they're very unofficial, and you have to sort of hack your OS to do it.
We have to change so many things.
And the problem with
settings.
that is that because they have progressively shut down many of the ways of doing that, that's an extra reason that I can't trust it to update. Even if I could just do a one-off update, I won't do it because there's a pretty good chance that they will have shut off all the ways that I have of preventing it from auto-updating in future, and I can't trust it to auto-update because they've shown they have no regard for my own work or things I'm in the middle
settings.
of.
I don't trust them with Anyway. And so it's one of those things where I was wondering whether to update to Windows 10 when, when I didn't really know anything about it, because I was considering some of the games. I felt annoyed about it. And I was wondering whether maybe I could just update my laptop or something, and still play, I don't know, Sea of Thieves or something, because that looked genuinely good. But I think it chafes and it it certainly does not encourage me to think well of Microsoft. And I think increasingly, every time I mention my problems with Windows 10 or how aggravating I find it, I do get messages from people saying, yeah, but I quite like it, or I think, and that's, I'm pleased for you, I really am, I just can't stand it, and I don't think that's a great position to be in as a provider, is basically dependent on people not wanting to or not being able to afford the other options, just so they stick with your horrific system. Like, I really think that that's poor, because as soon as a viable alternative came up, surely everyone's gonna just bugger off, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, Microsoft sort of feel like that anyway, and that's not to blame any single person at Microsoft. I think it's what happens with corporations, protecting corporation interests. They lose sight of any sense of realistic humanity. Yeah,
they said something since somebody said that it wasn't about Windows 10 updates, it was about upgrades to Windows 10. There's that thing going around where just it wasn't affecting Windows 7, I don't think, because that's what I have. But if you had Windows 8, it just sort of gave itself the right to upgrade you to Windows 10 without your permission at any time, even if you're in the middle of something. And, it wasn't just I heard of someone on the internet once who had this happen to them. It was like multiple friends of mine literally lost large amounts of work because it just spontaneously changed their OS in the middle of what they were doing. And someone from Microsoft did say that in retrospect that was over-aggressive.
Oh, God.
It's like, it's a bit late now. And also, how are you not foreseeing this? If you agree that shouldn't happen, you knew you were doing it, surely that's just... I think the only thing that changes, they realised how pissed off people were.
It's that thing though of, I think a lot of companies or you end up in that situation where it is that it's easier to apologise than seek permission. Yeah. And I hate that because it's so damaging and it's so prone to riding roughshod over people's rights, or like taking content and using it free of charge without permission, just banking on the fact that you won't get sued. I'm not speaking specifically about Microsoft here, but it's that thing of like people will push their luck and push their luck and push their luck, and then it's only when there's a lawsuit, or only when there's a class action lawsuit, or only when, it steps over into completely unacceptable in some capacity that it ever gets redressed, and I hate it so much.
And on that note...
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to talk, but you might have been about to sneeze.
Well, as my allergies claim me, as we hit the hour of dusk, where the plants start doing it, and so I can't breathe. The sexiest time of night. It's time to say goodbye. That's all the questions and grudges we've got time for. If you'd like to send us a question or a grudge for a future episode of the podcast, you can email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com or tweet us at crateandcrowbar. This is going to have to be a quick outro, because I'm going to sneeze. Crate and Crowbar is very kindly supported by our Patreon backers. You can find out more about supporting the podcast at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. Liking and rating and subscribing things and leaving reviews on iTunes are all great. Do those things. If you'd like to follow us as individuals, you can do so. I'm on Twitter at CThurston, that's CTHURSTEN. Pip is...
At Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR.
Tom, any Tom. Pick a Tom.
I, Tom F, am Pentadact, PENTADACT.
I, Tom S, am at PCG Ludo, which is spelled LUDO.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
What are you drinking there?
It is it's a porter, which is coffee infused. I have actually finished it, but you can smell it.
Thanks.